Hello, FraudCON. I am Ray, my colleague is Graham, and we are
Hello.
going to start with a scene of some considerable devastation that some of you may recall from the middle of 2020. It was fairly widely reported by the world's media at the time, but we're going to share with you a couple of aspects today that you may not have seen in the media at all. So let's start with what actually happened. Well, we're talking about a boat, aren't we, Graham?
We are a rather old rickety boat, Ray, but it was a boat, and there it is.
Yeah, there it is. Look, and now it was carrying quite a special cargo.
It was, and we should say at the outset, while we might have a certain lightness of touch with this
Hmm.
presentation, of course, the content is quite serious, and it
Mm-hmm.
probably needs that lightness of touch. Yes, that cargo was ammonium nitrate, which is both a fertilizer and a rather explosive substance, Ray.
Absolutely. Now, this had quite a bit of geographical spread this voyage, didn't it? The captain was Russian, the boat Moldovan, but owned by a Panamanian company. And we've got a picture of the captain. Look, there he is, and there he is with his mate on the
Yeah.
boat.
Not sure they'd be getting on quite so well now, though, because the captain's Russian, the mate's Ukrainian, which is not at the moment.
Yeah, absolutely. That's got a resonance, isn't it, in the present day?
It has.
So it docks in Beirut. It's declared unseaworthy and it's held there. Now, the cargo was brought on shore a year later and stored in the warehouse. What happened during that year, Graham? Do we know?
Well, we do. The crew and the captain and the cargo was kept on board. They wouldn't let them off because they didn't have the paperwork, and so for a year they were stuck on that boat without the ability to get off it.
Oh, it's a good job they were mates then, isn't it,
It
really?
certainly was.
So the ammonium nitrate then stayed in the warehouse. That's quite a disturbing phrase, isn't it? Started to leak somewhat and was
Yeah,
considered unstable.
yeah. It is quite an interesting proposition that whole bags of quite well sealed ammonium nitrate
Mm.
spontaneously started to leak. That's been debated somewhat.
Yes, yeah. There's differing opinions on how viable that is without human agency
Yeah,
intervening. Um, so the thing has exploded. We know that. And the question is, well, how much did it explode? It was big, wasn't it?
it was, and there's been quite a bit of, as we're going to see, quite a bit of research done on just how big it was.
Yeah, absolutely. So you could hear it over large parts of the region. Um, I mean,
And
that's big, isn't it? Being able
it's
to hear an explosion across 150 miles.
it's quite extraordinary. It's actually quite hard to imagine what that was like to be in Beirut when that happened. It's just
Mm,
extraordinary.
okay. So what happened there on the scene? Well, there is a picture of the docks and of Warehouse 12. That's the before picture. Shall we see the after picture?
Shall we? It's quite shocking, isn't it?
Mm.
I mean, that's the entire concrete dock has been blown away where the warehouse was. It's just demolished it and pretty much everything else around it.
Absolutely. And the numbers there on the slide don't really do justice to the human misery, do they?
No, I mean, Lebanese economy has collapsed. It's still desperately trying to regain its economic activity from there. And as you can see, I mean, 300,000 people left homeless by that blast. It's beyond belief.
Yeah, absolutely. So this all happened in Beirut, half a world away from us. We are UK financial crime investigators. So
Oh,
so how does this affect the UK? Well, we're going to see, because it turns out that that ammonium nitrate was being shipped on behalf of a UK company, right?
it was, and we should actually give credit here to a Lebanese journalist called Faraz Hatoum who contacted us and got us involved in this, and he did the original research and said, "Guys, I need some help your end because there's a connection here to London." So that's how we
Okay.
got brought in.
But we have confirmed this connection because we've dug out some paperwork, and although we've enhanced this image because it was a little bit scrappy, we haven't changed the content in any way at all.
We haven't.
But it does establish there the UK link. That's the purchase contract for the ammonium nitrate with Savaro Limited, this UK company.
Odd thing, really, isn't it, Ray, when you think about it, that a company in Mozambique's buying this from a company in Georgia through a company in the United Kingdom. It's not entirely
as you do,
clear.
Graham. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Now, Savaro Limited, this UK company, is a company with a bit of an interesting past, isn't it, Graham?
Well, it is. And of course, we're fortunate we have a free to access registry, which tells us a lot about that interesting past and allows us to have a good old look at it.
Now, it's been around for a while, 2006, so hardly a burner company, you wouldn't have said. But it was set up in London, in Tottenham Court Road, with a company secretary called Interstatus Limited, also a UK limited company.
Which is good, because it means we can go and have a look at all about that one as well.
Yeah, and at the time of this this contract and the events in Beirut, Savaro's director is a lady called Marina Silu, who's also the person with significant control. And for the moment, let's just assume that that's a very clearly defined phrase that means she owns the company effectively.
Yes.
Now, prior to the UK rules that said they had to name the person who owned the company as an individual person, the last declared shareholder was a company called Status Grand Limited.
Yes, it was indeed.
So let's look at the UK information in a little bit more detail. So we've got this firm called Savaro Limited, and we've got Marina Silu is all over it, right?
Well, she's the director, she's PSC.
And as we'll see, she might be involved in other ways as well. Interstatus Limited is the company secretary, another UK company, and oh, look.
It's her again.
Okay. So this is the Cypriot company, isn't it? Interstatus Business Services Limited.
Yes, along with Status Grand. They're both from Cyprus.
That's right. Should we go and have a look at them? So Status Grand. Oh, she's back again.
Many talented lady.
And Interstatus Business. This is getting a little repetitive, isn't it?
So effectively, Ray, Marina Silu is just every part of the ownership of Savaro resolves to one person, pretty much.
Yeah, absolutely. But not only those companies as well. It turns out she has quite a large number of company interests.
Yeah, and the interesting thing there is that the fact that because her native language is Greek, searching for her on the internet really requires you to understand that, because using both Western and Greek alphabets elicits quite different results, and important, I think, to get all of them.
Absolutely. Back to the UK, though.
Yep.
As you mentioned, we do have a free-to-access company register in the UK. It's based in Cardiff, which is why you can see the name translated into Welsh there as alongside the English. And it's the source of a very great deal of information about all companies registered in the UK. So what does it say about Savaro? Because we can go and dig into Savaro's past.
We can, and the filing history contains everything that's filed in relation to the company. So, for example, its registered address, the address of its company records, etc., etc., and we can see a history of its movement. So it was quite mobile, wasn't it? Right?
Yeah. So it started off in Tottenham Court Road in West London, then it moved to 10 Great Russell Street in 2008. And then we've got the involvement of an office in St John Prince's Street, and then it's in Cotton Gardens, which sounds delightful, doesn't it, Graham?
Well, it does.
Shall we see what that looks like?
Shall we?
Oh,
Not quite so
perhaps not.
delightful.
No,
No.
okay. So Interstatus Limited, our other UK company, which remember is the company secretary for Savaro, because it is also crammed into that little industrial unit.
Along with lots of others, I think.
Yeah, I think so. So all of those forms for all of the moves were signed by Marina. But interestingly, both companies have only ever filed dormant accounts.
It's a good
Dormant
trick.
accounts.
Good trick if you just bought 2,700 tons of ammonium nitrate and shipped it halfway around the world, isn't it?
Yeah. So I mean that's what it sounds like, isn't it, Graham? These are accounts in short format for a company which is ostensibly dormant. It's sleeping.
Exactly.
Not doing anything.
Yes. And because it's not operating in the UK, there's no way to check whether it is really dormant or not.
Okay. So while we're at the UK register, let's see some other interesting things we can find there. Now, here's a completely new name, Hesco Engineering and Construction Company Limited. Now, that was incorporated in 2005, that year before Savaro.
Yep.
It'll become clear, incidentally, why we're looking at this shortly. You can see they're listed as director and secretary, and Mr. Arbash, previously Mr. Heswani.
Yep.
Now, the reason why we're looking at it starts to become clear when we look at various movements that it made in its corporate officing.
Yes, same
Because
dates, same addresses.
Absolutely. Original shareholders, George Keswani and Yusuf Arbash. Now, notice that the differences in spelling there between the different incarnations of those names. And we'll collect one or two more as we go through as well, won't we, Graham?
We will indeed, Ray. We will indeed.
Now, why did that one catch our eye? Because it's not the only company that shares those movements. Probably because of that.
Yeah, it's quite. I think that's quite serious, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. So OFAC, of course, the Office of Foreign Asset Control, that's the United States sanctioning body.
Yeah, been in the news a bit lately again.
Absolutely. Now, the PSC, which you'll remember means the official owner of this company, Yusuf Abrash, another new spelling.
Fat fingers, Ray.
I think so, Graham. That's interesting. Marina Silu's signing documents, some on behalf of this secretarial company, which has never on paper had anything to do with Hesco at all.
Yeah.
Extraordinary.
Yes.
Okay. So another one. Alpha Procurement and Machinery Limited, incorporated a little bit later. That's that fella again.
It is.
Quite active for a sanctioned person.
Aha, interstatus.
Indeed. And some familiar addresses.
And dates.
Movements from one part of London to another.
So these three companies, I think we can say quite, definitively were in lockstep, weren't they?
Yeah.
In terms of their
right.
their locations in lockstep.
Very much so.
So fat fingers again, though.
Yeah, seems to be, doesn't it? Seems to be, very much so. So what's this about? Why are these companies interesting? Well, as we've noted, the two individuals are sanctioned people.
Yep.
Shouldn't really be having that kind of industrial interest at all. Mr. Haswani is joint Syrian-Russian. He was sanctioned by OFAC in November 2015, along with his company, Hesco Engineering. Why was that? Well, interesting, right?
It's not a good look, is it?
Not very.
So Hesco was a company that managed oil fields. So, and the assertion was that he facilitated the sale of the oil from those oil fields on behalf of ISIS to the Syrian government.
Okay, now let's bring this even closer together.
Yeah.
So the same day that Mr. Haswani was sanctioned. So was an alleged associate of his, Mr. Khoury, who, now this is an odd coincidence, isn't it, Graham, was alleged to have been an intermediary in the attempted procurement of ammonium nitrate from a Russian company. That does ring a bell.
On behalf of ISIS. So yeah, that's really not a good look.
No, absolutely. So what else can we say here? Well, what about Mr. Arbash / Abrash?
Yeah.
Also sanctioned, this time in 2016. He was Hesco's head and director in Russia.
He was also Mr. Haswani's son-in-law. Just to
That's
throw that
probably
one in.
worth pointing out, isn't it?
Yeah.
Now, on the same day, Mr. Khoury, his brother, was also sanctioned. A former director and 50% shareholder of another UK company. They're all over the place, aren't we?
Yeah.
Aren't they? So let's have a look at the IK Petroleum Industrial Company Limited, just briefly. And I think this is indicative of the free-form nature of some of the investigations that we get involved in. Incorporated in 2013, a bit more recently, straight to St John Prince's Street. Oh, there's a new name.
Igor Ivanik, yeah. No, the others though, don't we?
Oh, indeed. So Khoury and Ivanik each owned 50% of the shares. Now we've got this filing on the 29th of July 2016, which may be a date that rings a bell, which was backdated to the 18th of July, so that theoretically, this transfer happened 3 days before Mr. Khoury was sanctioned.
Yeah. Do you know, we've seen a few other people very recently doing very similar activities, although they were Russian in this case, rather than Syrian Russian. But
shocking.
Yeah. Yes.
Okay, so let's put some of this together because it's been quite a free-form investigation. We've got 3 companies so far associated with sanctioned individuals. 1 anonymous company, effectively associated with the Beirut blast. All 4 with quite striking links: the same address, the same directors, same filing dates, and the same signatures. So the question arises: what else might they have in common? Do we see a network here, Graham, or possibly part of a network?
I think we definitely see part of a network, Ray. It would take us probably a day or 2 to go into it in huge detail, but there are many tendrils coming off this network.
Which we don't have time today, but there is one tantalizing thing that we can look at briefly. Let me show you a couple of pictures to start with.
Yes.
Do you recognize those at all?
Well, I do, but I'm not sure most people would necessarily.
No. Should we give them a little more context?
Yes.
I
think we recognize who.
Yeah, so this is Arkady and his friend. And this is his brother, Boris. And they seem to have a friend in common, don't they?
They do. They're judo mates.
Graham, talk us through this piece of research.
Very briefly, because I know we're running out of time, but this was a report on the art market and its use in avoiding sanctions back in 2020, released virtually, oddly, coincidentally at the same time as the blast in Beirut. And these 2 gentlemen used shell companies to evade sanctions through the art market.
There they are, all 3 UK shell companies. And if we dig into those records, you'll notice some very familiar addresses. They're the same ones as the companies that we were looking at earlier, with familiar directors, which kind of begs the question, which we don't have the time to go into today. What can this mean? And we'll leave you with that thought. We've been Graham and Ray of the Dark Money Files. Do check out our podcast and other events, and we'd be more than happy to connect with the good people at this conference. Look us up.
Thank you.
Thanks for your time.